Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the CHP podcast. My name is Ariana Scalfo. I'm the director of coaching here at CHP and the host of the podcast most of the time. I'm here today with Alex Viada, owner of CHP, author of 2 books about hybrid athletics at this point, and Ben and Mats, who are some of the creators behind the Hybrid app. So, welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me. The thing that we're going to be talking about today, and that we're excited to talk about today, is the ongoing collaboration between CHP and HYBRD, which has been just really cool to be a part of and really fun to witness. And all of the new things that we're putting out, that have been put out, that you should definitely be aware of. And then some things that we're working on for the future. The biggest thing that we've recently done is we've taken all of the running and strength programs from Alex's new book, and we have incorporated those into HYBRD as the training plans. So I wanted to just open up the floor to Alex, Ben, Mats, and ask you guys to kind of talk about how we ended up here. How did you guys get connected?
Oh man, do you guys want to cover that? Because I feel like it's kind of a funny story. Almost to the point where I wouldn't even know like where to start on it.
Yeah, I can take a crack at it.
Yeah.
So we've looked up to Alex and CHP for a really long time. I mean, I remember Ben and I the day we decided to start Hybrid. One of the PDFs that we were reading really closely was Alex's original manuscript on hybrid athletes from like 2015, and so we always knew that we wanted to talk to you guys and hopefully partner with CHP. And but like we didn't really have much at the time, so we just kind of focused on building the app. And then Ben and I, we get flooded from college students who are asking about like entrepreneurship and tech and stuff like that, and we try to get back to as many people as we can. And I'm really happy that I spoke with this great woman out in California named Monica Adams, who reached out to me, had some questions about hybrid, and at the end was like, "Hey, do you want an introduction to Alex Viada?" And I was like, "That is kind of what I've been hoping for months." And then she was kind enough to introduce us, and then we got on a couple of calls, and we were really pumped that you had checked out hybrid, and it was still really in the early stages of the product, didn't have any training plans in it, but
You saw
that's
the
kind of where
vision.
saw the vision, and that's kind of how this started.
Yeah, I really did because it's funny because for so long we've wanted ways of getting our programming we talked for ages about like app development and how cool that would be. And this was even back 5-6 years ago when every company was developing their own app, and most were not very good. They're just like little apps. But we were like, man, we really want to get into that, but we wouldn't know where to start. Whatever we created would not be able to do a tenth of the things that we would really need it to do to be of high quality. And Monica Blessers just shows the power of just going ahead and reaching out, even if just go ahead and ask. And when I started talking to you guys and saw like what you guys were putting together and how you weren't just trying to like recreate something that existed, but actually had ideas for like visualizations and integration, and like it seemed to move it forward. And I was looking through like some of the samples which you're doing. I was like, this is just really cool. Like everything about it, it's useful. It does everything I want it to do. And on top of that, it just looks like something. It looks like an app I would want to spend my time in. And I don't know. It just through the whole process, it's been this sort of thing where what you guys put together would kind of been on my wish list for an app, and you guys were already doing it. You were ahead of the game, and y'all had the chops and actual resume and expertise to make it happen. So I guess the rest is just kind of history.
Yeah, we definitely lucked out on the opportunity here. Moss and I were reflecting beforehand how it's kind of funny that when we first set this out, we like kind of like made a short list of people that we were hoping to work with one day, and your name was like the first name on that list. And we were laughing about how nervous we were before we got on the first call with you. We were like, we really need this to go well. Like, I really want to work. I really want to work with Alex. And it's fun to have like come as far as we have, where now it's like, like we're working together regularly. Like you guys are an integral part of the product experience and helping making it magical. And super thankful. And good things happen when you try to build things that are actually solving user problems.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, I think that's what's worked so well in the timing as well too. Is even just like, putting the book together and having all these programs. I was like, it would be really cool to just have an easy way to deliver this kind of stuff to people. Because it's like, some of the stuff is complicated, and like, in this in this day and age, if you get a program in a book, it's kind of like, all right, I got to sit down there with a notepad, and you can do it, but having it actually be like automated and work with you and all that, it's like, okay, this, like, back in the day when you get an old textbook and like a CD would come with it with like the program in the book, I was like, this is kind of like the updated version of it in a lot of ways. So,
Totally. And to your point, like there's just an infinite number of personalizations that users want to have with their program. And you guys see this every day as coaches,
yeah.
whether it's like, what rest day do I have? What equipment do I have? When can I do
Mhm.
my long sessions? And I think what you have in the book is like a great generalized template. And then what we're doing is just helping users do that like last level of personalization. And huge
Yeah.
shout out to Trevor as well, who's been really helpful in kind of codifying a lot of that stuff and making sure that the modifications that we make through our models are consistent with the coaching philosophy that you guys have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say is that there's actually a quote from Ariana in one of our calls at one point when we were brainstorming, where she said, the best plan is a plan that the athlete can actually follow and will actually follow. And, it's so hard to make that work without a very, like a super high degree of personalization and personal touch, et cetera, that is really difficult to actually do at scale. And we're trying to build that experience in a way that we are able to make these amazing plans actually work for people, because everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's been one of the cool things working with Trevor on this. Trevor worked with Alex, correct, on helping you develop the key for your programs for the book. So Trevor had all of the rules and the keys kind of in a document and in his brain already. So when we talked about putting the book's programs into hybrid, having Trevor like already fluent and already able to basically turn Alex's rules into rules that could be used in hybrid, having him kind of as the liaison has been just so helpful. So huge shout out to Trevor. He's just too damn
Yeah,
busy to be
seriously.
here today. But yeah, huge shout out to Trevor. It's been cool when Trevor and I started working on the templates almost 3 years ago. And we were talking about where we wanted the templates to end up, and we were developing the V3 templates together, what we wanted the templates to do. We were very much trying to solve that issue, which is that you can write the perfect program, but if someone can't alter it enough to be able to follow it, and that like in really reasonable ways, right? Like
Mhm.
not everyone has the same amount of time to work with. Not everyone has the same amount of days they can train or the same access to equipment. And so our hope with the V3 templates was to be able to create levels of the template that people could switch through so they could continue training unbroken, even if the training was slightly different week over week, depending on their access. Or they could run through the program at a minimum level and then kind of bump it up when they have more time later in the year, however they wanted to do it. That was our kind of initial dream, but obviously knowing that in an app, this would be better. Like anything's better than an Excel spreadsheet. So being able to talk with you guys, Ben Motz and the team over at HYBRD, and be able to utilize the metrics that you guys are already tracking using HYBRD, because when you first developed it, it was for just workout tracking, right? Like it was just a workout tracking app. And you guys really focused on high quality data collection. And like Alex was saying, it's very easy to view. Can you guys talk to us about that first iteration of HYBRD and the things that you found most important for the user, and then the ways that you solved that? Like, I know, just to say as an example, not to speak for you guys, but I know as a user, it was so easy to connect all of my devices to HYBRD, and it
Yeah.
pulled all of my historical data for me. Like, it was just so seamless to get set up. And I know that's something you guys obviously did on purpose. Can you talk me through other things like that you did with HYBRD just right out of the gate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, we built HYBRD to solve a personal problem. Like we are the types of athletes that want to use this. Like, we've done marathons, ultra marathons, Ironmans, et cetera, all while lifting. And because of that, and like our background is in fitness tech, like we used to work at Whoop, all these things, and we're super nerds when it comes to fitness and data. And so, on any given day, I'm wearing a Whoop and a Garmin guaranteed, and then probably if I'm working out, a Polar Heart strap, got the Form swim goggles, got the bike computer, Zwift, like all these different data sources, and making sense of that data like all in one place was next to impossible. And so, Mats and I, being the super nerds that we are, tracked our own workouts in spreadsheets for years to try and get at the type of insights that Hybrid was built to be able to deliver. And so our first two things that we set out to do were like, how do we make it super seamless to pull in the data from all the devices that you're already using? And so we built the integrations to Garmin, Strava, Whoop, or Apple Watch, et cetera. And then the second was more of a broader problem, which is weightlifting really stinks to track. How can we make that experience a little bit better? And so that was actually one of the first things that we set out to do that was in our minds like net new, novel, and unique. And so we started this in late 2024, and we were the first ones to build an AI-powered workout capture experience. And so the way that works is you could just freehand text something that said like 5x5 bench press, 225, 3x10 squat, 315, like whatever you want. Or you can take a screenshot or a picture of the whiteboard at the CrossFit gym. And then the AI would pull out the exercises, the sets, the reps, the weight, the structure, if it's an EMOM, an AMRAP, et cetera. And it would use all of this data to understand what did you actually do? And then how does that compare to things like what your expected time under tension would be? And like, what is that relative to like what your potential 1 rep max theoretically is? And use that type of data behind the scenes to help athletes better understand what is the actual training load they're putting on their body. A lot of products are already doing this from a cardio perspective, but nobody was doing it from a strength training perspective. And even if people were doing it from a strength training perspective, getting the workouts in to be able to get that useful data was next to impossible. And it wasn't put in context with all of their cardio work.
What I think I really like about that too is like, I know one of the reasons why endurance training has become so, like, anybody can be a data nerd about it these days because like wearables are everywhere. Integration is easy. I mean, your Garmin will spit out more data than you need at any point. You can be somebody who has no experience with this stuff whatsoever. But on the lifting side of things, it's been really interesting over the years watching weight training slowly evolve into more data driven, but still kind of struggling with it. Like, there are still the guys out there, the coaching outfits out there that are doing like velocity tracking and using velocity tracking dynamic and all that, but it's still pretty niche.
Yeah,
it really is. And I think that's because a lot of people just don't feel like they have a way to capture that data. And they almost don't even think of like turning the subjective workout itself, like what are the reps and sets and weights and all that, into some sort of data tracking point that's anything more than just, well, here are your total pounds lifted. So I honestly think just nobody's really managed to nail it. I mean, and that's, kind of what you guys were doing is you're like, okay, this is the first thing we're going to do. This is like, and I think honestly, like I think a lot more people are going to start appreciating this direction once they see what it can do for them.
Yeah, I wanted to point out. Oh, sorry, Matt, did you just talk?
I was going to say, I think to your point, like a lot of this is friction, and that was the first thing that we had to solve. And then the second thing was like, okay, what do you actually do with that information? To your point, like I think it's been clear what you can do with cardio data for a long time if you look at like training impulse and things like that. But something pretty novel that we did was to, in the same way that, if you, and these are great products and great companies that I look up to, but on Strava or Training Peaks, if you do a ride or a run, you get a certain amount of training load and you can add it up over time. There really wasn't an equivalent on the strength side. We did a lot of work building a comparable metric that you could compare strength training load and cardio training load apples to apples, and that really starts kind of powering a lot of the more advanced coaching stuff that we're starting to talk about now.
Yeah, which is so effective for obviously that the title of the app is hybrid. Saying you're a data oriented hybrid coach, but you don't actually have any data for the strength side. I mean,
it's hard to solve a puzzle if you only have half the pieces.
Exactly.
I can't believe we got the trademark for hybrid anyways.
I was going to point out, Ben, the new feature that you just introduced, I love. I use a lot of just thinking about prescription for strength training. One of the issues with prescription for strength training is that a lot of people, they don't know their established 1 rep max. So percentage-based training is really difficult. And you can guess someone's 1 rep max, right? But what your program, in collecting all the data that it's doing and constantly reevaluating people's predicted 1 rep max, and then the new thing that you just introduced, Ben, which was that sort of range,
Yeah.
which I think is brilliant, because I work with daily maxes for my clients all the time. Not that, like, I'm not operating off of 100%. I'm just operating off of what I feel a reasonable daily max would be for them. And it's really difficult as a strength athlete, especially if you're new, to self-select that.
Totally.
It's so hard. So with that new visual that you've built, because with running and cycling, it can show you your FTP, and it'll show you, how close you are to, like, the FTP to me is like, it's a 20-minute long test, right? But we don't really have anything for new strength athletes the same way we don't really have anything for new cycling athletes to find that. So I don't know, it's just been really cool to see you guys solving that as well, as far as like a strength athlete trying to select a good working weight for their workout today, or for the app to suggest a reasonable working weight.
Yeah.
I've just found that to be such a brilliant addition. Go ahead and talk about it if you want, but I just thought that was great.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you like it. I think one of the things that we we spend a lot of time thinking about is there's a lot of things when it comes to training that are really just education problems. But if you throw walls of text at people in an app, like, they don't read it. And so how do you create an experience that educates them intuitively without having to like force feed them like, hey, spend like 1, 2, 3, 5 minutes reading about this topic? And I think that the visual that you're talking about, this like distribution chart of like, what can you expect your potential output to look like today, is a great way to help people like kind of connect the dots in their head. Like, sure, my 1 rep max on bench press might be X, but like if I go out and try to 1 rep max today, I actually might be able to I might end up only being able to do 10 pounds less, or I might be able to do a little bit more and surprise myself. Like, every day is a little bit different. There's all sorts of variables like recovery and weather and like all like what training you did the day before that impact what you're capable of in any given moment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because I think in some ways we've sort of hit a wall in innovation, even a couple of years ago. Because I think a lot of wearables now, I mean, even then, there's still the same data points that they're going after. And
Yep.
even in endurance training, like, even as more and more coaches and writers talk about the importance of strength training, like, in a lot of cases, they still don't have a way to quantify the total load. So, again, like, you're having, even as we make quote unquote advances in, personalized data collection and development and everything else, we still don't have a way in most cases for people to actually quantify the work an athlete is doing. And I think that's kind of what it sort of at this point makes no excuse for that anymore. Like, you can't, if you have to move forward, if you're going to actually integrate things like proper strength training and plyometric training and a full suite of, effective training, modalities for any athlete, it has to be with this kind of format. And, I think now that you guys are actually, in a lot of ways, pioneering it, it's got to become the standard.
I totally agree. I think one of the things that we talk about internally a lot is that fitness is so inherently personalized, and AI is the first technology that truly unlocks personalization at scale, but it still needs the right data points fed into that for it to actually be useful. And we're trying to bridge the gap of, we need to make sure that we can make it as easy as the start stop on the watch to get all of the data we need, even if it's not that easy on the face of it. Like, it's a hard problem, which means it's worth solving. And then solve that problem, use that with that power of AI to actually be able to create these hyper-personalized experiences.
So talk to me about, I know, with the first iteration of getting the CHP plans in hybrid, what we did was just, figure out how we would make our sort of Excel V3 templates for hybrid. And then to your point about using data points or information to educate your AI to then educate template decisions, I think where we're at now with using Alex's book as the cornerstone for that, we're so much closer to that than we were before. Can you kind of talk to me about what that process has looked like with like if an athlete wants to change their program from 4 days to 3 days of strength, like what questions is the app asking itself and what is it pulling from to get those answers?
Yeah. You want to take this one? You want me to?
Sure. Yeah, totally. To your point, the first iteration of this, we were using the spreadsheets that you had already made available on your website. And in that world, we were just kind of like mimicking what a training plan would look like, but we didn't actually deeply understand like what are the rules that a training plan needs to follow. And so Ben already touched on a little bit about how like to perform well, the AI needs the right data, but it also we call it context. It also needs to have the right constraints on it of like you can you should never schedule a very high fatiguing lift right before the interval session or something like that. All these rules that that Alex lays out in the book, we can then give to our model as a constraint, and then we just constantly are checking ourselves, checking our own work of like, did we follow all the best practices of hybrid training? Yes or no? And if no, then we can go back and generate a new one. And I think that's what really separates a hybrid plan from like someone just going into ChatGPT, where like, okay, at first glance, what you see might look like a viable training plan, but if you try to follow it or really know anything about training, especially as the plan gets longer and longer, you'll start to notice these like weird hallucinations that actually don't make sense. And so a lot of the work that we've done is putting those guardrails in place. And that's why the timing works so well with Alex's book launch. We're like, you guys had already done all the work and kind of like pioneering the right guardrails for hybrid training. And then what we can do is use our models to kind of like fill in the blanks of like, okay, we need to swap this session with tomorrow's session or something like that. There's less room for there's less possibility for error there.
Yeah, I think that's what you said on guardrails is incredibly important because, I've even been tagged a couple times from people saying, yeah, I just plugged in, prompted to ChatGPT that's like, can you make a workout in Alex Viada style to combine these two things? And it's like, often, sometimes you'll actually get pretty good outputs because, these language models are taking a lot of data and putting it together and seeing patterns and everything else. But as things get more complicated and understanding the nuances of like, why is this done in that order? That's something that an AI can only do if you're giving it the exact sets of rules. You're saying, okay, here are the limitations. Here are constraints on your output that it may not look like a big deal until you're 3 weeks into the program without those constraints and realizing, crap, like my legs are just absolutely, utterly hammered on Tuesday. And like this portion of my workout, this portion of my training regimen has been getting worse. And it's because there's one or two minor facets of the training. It can be something as simple as like selecting the repetition, like selecting the percentage or reps in reserve on the strength training day beforehand. That really made the difference. And I think that's what's so important is the right set of guardrails, the right set of constraints, and a cohesive, more than anything else, like a cohesive sense of guardrails. Because if you have a pulling from like 10 different sources, yeah.
Totally agree. I think the other thing I'll add is that I think there's where I think a lot of the models don't fully understand right now is the why behind a lot of these things. And so like one of the things that's really important for us is we need our models to understand what is the actual like physiological adaptation that you are hoping to elicit from a given workout. And then if you're like, I can't go do this workout today, like give me something else, it can create something that is like we can give suggestions that are based on recreating that same adaptation, but in a different form factor or with a different time span around it, et cetera. And it just makes the whole experience much smarter as opposed to something where it's like, oh, like you can't do this lift today. Like here's something totally random that is also a workout, which is what ChatGPT would give you.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned that too, because like one of the things I deal with quite a lot, and this is even just working with clients and even for myself, is every now and then you look at a workout and you're just like, especially for me, cycling workouts, I get this all the time. I look at it and I'm just like, I don't want to do that today. Like, absolutely not. Like I, had great intentions, but that second 7 minute and you're like, no, that's just not gonna. And then what's funny is like, all right, well, I don't want to do that, but then knowing that there are other things you can do that have the same general effect that are going to avoid whatever it is that you desperately don't want to do that day. And, same thing on lifting. Like if you're like, hey, I really just don't feel like doing front squats today. Like that's just having the alternatives that are not just an alternative. It's not just like, well, instead of front squats, why don't you do this other leg movement? It's like, no, we're going to give you something that actually gives you a viable substitute. It's the next best thing. It's not just another thing. It's the next best thing, or even like something equivalent in every way. That is so, so good for staying on track, because, in a lot of ways, there's nothing worse than actually feeling you're just having a down week. And, you make a substitution or you knock off one of your workouts. You're like, I'm just going to do some zone 2 instead of those intervals, which is fine and all. But then there's a feeling at the end of the week, like, you're like, did I waste my time? Could I still have done something productive? Being able to have the confidence that you were given something that was still productive, but fit more of where your head and body were at. Like, that's phenomenal. That is like, especially for non-professional athletes, which is 99.9% of us, where we're fitting this into the rest of life. It is so nice to have that level of not just customization, but also reassurance that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, totally. I think it goes back to that same Ariana quote of like, the best plan is one that the athlete can actually follow. Yep. Some people have preferences, and like, that's okay. Like, we can work around those preferences to create the same adaptations. We have to know what they are, and we have to be able to adapt to them. So, there are things that we don't do perfectly with that currently, but it's like our biggest focus is how do we make this experience just like, it should just work for you every single day, no matter what.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing about building out the HYBRD program, because that just came out, right? That's live, guys.
Yep.
So I worked with Mats and Reuters and Ben, mostly Mats and Reuters.
I was on the sidelines. I was busy making stuff.
You're working on other important stuff. On bringing the HYBRD plan to hybrid. And it was just so cool with the two of them, and especially Mats being like, what's the purpose of this workout? And if we were going to replace this with something else, what would we replace it with? And really having those like deep down coaching discussions, especially for HYBRD, because there's so much pace specific work, pacing work, skill work, that, you're working on 4 different modalities for cardio, all these strength movements for HYBRD. It's actually very complex to do HYBRD coaching. And it was just really cool to get all those answers sorted out with the guys, so that we were confident that when we put this plan out, if someone, had to skip a session, or, a lot of the things that we talked about were, okay, what if someone has 8 weeks to a race instead of the 12? And we have to truncate the whole thing. What are the most important sessions? So on and so forth. And I'm excited to keep building that out with you guys, because I think there's so much value there. That's the coaching you can't get from AI. Like, you can't. Like,
100%.
You really can't.
I think HYBRD is such a good example of like how these things get really, really complicated really fast. Like, of course, if you were only running or you're only lifting, and there's lots of good products on the market that can help you with just that single goal. When you put those together, the goal gets more complicated. But then when you're doing something like HYBRD, that's like, and triathlon, we're working through this now, where it's like, it's multiple modalities, it's strength, it's cardio. I mean, HYBRD has this like kind of tactical and skill-based component to it as well. There's just so many more vectors for like personalization. And I think that's where the tool that we're working on together gets more and more powerful, because we can actually really be precise and give that exact athlete the exact thing that we think will move the needle the most for them.
Totally. Not to mention like the additional equipment complexities that come with a HYBRD too. Like, how do you train for a HYBRD if you don't have sleds? Like, what's the next best alternative? Like, how can we better prescribe stuff to support that use case? Things like that.
Yeah. HYBRD is especially interesting one too, because HYBRD is an interesting one because, like, as you noted, the idea of like, what is the point of this workout, and training with intention is something that I think not only could do a lot of ChatGPT programs not really be able to answer, but I think no shade to anyone, but I think a lot of coaches probably couldn't answer that either. Because in a lot of cases, you see people just putting stuff together because they're like, oh, this is tough. Or, oh, I was given this workout once. I really liked it. I felt really good. I'm going to pass it on to my client. And it's like, okay, but what is this doing? Like, what are you working on here? Yes, this is hard, but what is this making you better at? And I think even just having the answer to that question be a part of the design phase in the first place is like, oh, yeah, that's how mixed modal sport training should be, especially something like HYBRD, where it is a sport. It's not, there's no, it's not the unknowable. It's not, you know exactly what's going to happen. You know exactly what you need to work on to do well. So I think having that integrated from step one is like, that's a really powerful tool.
Yeah, it's been so fun, like seeing Ariana's and CHP's point of view on a lot of that. Like, I've been rowing my entire life, like trained on the national team. Like, I've spent millions and millions, the millions and millions of meters on the rowing machine. But seeing it in the context of a high rocks has been so different. Where it's like, okay, it's not just about like what's going to make you the fastest for the 1K on the erg here, but you also need to be able to like then jump off and run and go to the next station, and just like a totally different this machine that I've used my entire life is like a totally different experience in that context. And so I agree, like multimodal sports, like you kind of get to like experience learning how to use the rowing machine, like all these different modalities again, because you have to like understand the big picture as opposed to just like, I actually need to like get through this 1K.
Yeah, it would be like row like Mott's on a 10K row. And that would be reasonable.
If you're lucky like me, you get Mott's to teach you how to use the rowing machine correctly. So I think
That's
that
huge.
if you watch the average person at a high rocks using the rowing machine and you actually know how to use a rowing machine, it probably hurts you a little bit inside.
Oh, it hurts deep in your soul because you're like, oh my gosh, you're just like hurting yourself.
Well, it's all fun and games for me on the rowing machine, but then when it gets to the wall balls, it's like, dude, I'm so unathletic. I just like miss the target every time. So, we all have our own things to.
He wasn't a big hand-eye guy.
So for triathlon, I know I haven't seen what this looks like for you yet. In hybrid, what does swimming look like?
Yeah. So Trevor and I are going to talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, but first a disclaimer, like anyone using hybrid to prepare for a triathlon, like if you are someone who hasn't swam before or a very novice swimmer, you should definitely seek out a certified instructor or coach who can help you with can help you on that front. But one thing that's been interesting that we're working through on the plans is figuring out like what's the right amount of swimming for an athlete. I think swimming is such a, and I'm painfully learning this as I'm on my Ironman journey, where it's like, it's on the one hand such a small component on the race, but like if you can't get through the swim, you're just not going to be able to do the Ironman. And so the approach we've been taking so far is that if you're a very novice swimmer, we actually assign you more swimming so that even though it's not a huge component of the race from a total time perspective, so that you don't just not be able to finish and have to tap out then. And then if we can tell that you're a very advanced swimmer, we actually dial back the swimming. We're like, look, like a lot of the efficiency gains here, and we can look at your data on this, but like a lot of the efficiency gains here come from the bike and the run. And so you're probably better off just swimming once a week or something like that.
Yeah. My in this past November, my co-founder Shu and I, or our other co-founder Shu and I, both did Ironman Arizona. And I came from a background of having literally never swam until 2 months before my first half Ironman the year before. And Shu grew up swimming and like was on swim team and like is a very good swimmer. And so in terms of total hours swam during the training block, I probably swam 4 or 5 times as much as she did, because I needed to be able to get through the 2.4 miles and both like be physically capable of doing it, also like not totally torch myself while doing it, and also be confident enough in my swimming so when I inevitably get kicked in the goggles, I don't panic and freak out. And so the extra hours in the pool are really helpful if you sink like me.
It's for most of us, the swim, like you're not going to ever win a triathlon or like get your goal time because of how well you swam, but you could definitely miss your target or lose the race because of your swim.
100%. Totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that kind of thing is a pretty cool insight too, because in a lot of cases, people who go into triathlons may yes, there's a certain percentage of triathletes who come from a swimming background. They're like, hey, I'm really good at swimming, so I'm going to go do an event where that's, 10% of it and get really good. But most people go to triathlons are like runners and they get on the bike for the first time and they're like, oh, I really like this, or like vice versa. And then someone says, have you thought of doing a triathlon? They go, no. But then they feel like compelled to do it, and then they start their whole triathlon career, and tens of thousands of dollars and multiple ruined relationships later, they've done their first Ironman. But like for a lot of them too, like going into swimming is like, that's the harder part to program, because a lot of people intuitively know, okay, here's how I get better at running. Oh, okay, here's how I get better at cycling. Just got to put some miles in. At the end of the day, if you just put a bunch of easy miles in on the bike and the run, you're probably going to finish the race. Like, yes, performance and everything else, we want to optimize it. Obviously, there's a lot to it. But for the most part, you're like, okay. For swimming, you're like, well, what, 1 hour per week, 2 hours per 3 hours? How long should each session be? Should I just get in and just do straight, steady laps? And, they do that for a while, and finally they can do, 2,000 meters, and it takes them an hour and 45 minutes. They go, well, this probably isn't the greatest. So there's so many questions, and having that be kind of dynamic like that and give them customized based on their level. This is not just a generic, okay, here are 2 swims per week with some drills. It's going based on your proficiency, based on everything else. Like, here's a tailored program for you. Precisely, like, if you're newer to it, you'll actually do more. Like, a lot of people don't think about that. And it is really important.
And to your point on the crossover between disciplines, like Trevor and I were just working on this when we were working on that swapping functionality that Ariana was mentioning earlier. Like, cycling to running, it's not one for one, but like if you can spend a good amount on the bike and you'll get a little bit better on your run and vice versa. Swimming, it's just so skill based where like I kind of naively, I think Ben as well, it's like when I first started getting ready for this Ironman, I was like, well, I'm pretty fit. I'm good on the bike. I'm a good runner. Like, I just need to get this motion down and then I'll be flying on the swim too. And it's so skill based and, you really have to like learn how to float on the water and it hasn't worked that way. It's like more hours on the bike doesn't also make me a better swimmer in the same way that like it actually has a non-trivial impact on my, hours on the bike has on my run. So it's kind of just a different ball game that has been a fun challenge to work into our programs.
For sure. My first ever triathlon, it was like a couple months, maybe like 3 or 4 months after I ran my first 50K. And in my head, I'm like, I'm in great shape. This won't be a problem at all. And then I got into the pool and I learned very quickly that it actually doesn't matter how fit you are if you can't breathe. So, the swimming technique is pretty helpful.
Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, I really like that you mentioned too, the value of like getting some in-person training sessions too, because that's the other thing too, is, you may have a lot of aspiring triathletes who think, well, I don't know how to swim. I'm just going to join a couple master swim classes. They go, they do the drills. That's great. But there needs to be a kind of a balance. It's great to get the in-person, learn form, learn technique, be around other swimmers, but also make sure you're doing the dose appropriate for your training. So it's definitely good to have the combination of both. If you got the template written out for you, you got the customized program, it's still good to find a place where you can get in the water with people who know what they're doing, or even better, take a couple classes. If you got access to the classes, you still need to know, hey, how much do I actually need for this event? Because if you're like most of us training for triathlons, you don't exactly have time to burn. If you don't have to go into 4 sessions per week to swim, you don't. Like, do just what you need to do. So.
And totally, I think that's true in general for how we see hybrid. Like, we're a tool in your toolkit. We can help you with a lot of the workout program and getting the right training plan in place. But of course, you're always going to benefit from talking to a real human coach and a coach that can help you understand like your motivation, your psychology, like all that higher order stuff. That's not just like moving around a rest down the calendar, but true coaching. And I think that's true for swimming, but it's true for like all of the templates that we offer on hybrid. There's also such a benefit to like, training with a buddy or like doing a running session together, like accountability. Like, those are all things that, hybrid plays a big role in those things and getting you the right program. But there's all this awesome stuff of like having great coaches, having great teammates that I don't think will ever go away.
Well, so that's actually the other cool thing is, and this just made me think of it. You've got 2 people who want to train together who are drastically different levels, but want to kind of do the same workouts on the same day. How easy is it for them to sync that up? Each one goes into their own account and says, hey, I want to train this on this day, put it together.
Yeah. So you can get like, right now, you can get most of the way there just from having similar programs. I do have this on the back of my mind as like a cool feature down the line too, where it'd be cool to like literally sync up with people. Cause like a lot of people are like, hey, let's sign up for this race together or whatever. So I think that would be a really cool community lever that is kind of like on the back burner for us as something that would be cool to do. And I think a lot of the fun too isn't just the program, but and people can see this in the app today of like, when we give you that breakdown of your strength versus cardio abilities, we normalize everything by age, gender, and weight. So you can actually compare apples to apples across athletes, regardless of who they are. So like Ben and I used to like love to try and debate like who's actually the better athlete, because like I'm a little bit more of a cardio guy, Ben's more of a strength guy. It's like cumulatively though, like who's a better athlete, and it got even more fun when we brought in our other co-founders. Shu is this like super strong woman in a lot of way. A lot of the time, she's actually the better overall athlete than Ben or I. You just like have to adjust the data to be able to fully see the math behind it.
That's good.
Talk to me more about the hybrid score. We haven't really talked about that yet. You guys are using what you call the hybrid score to summarize someone's overall fitness using all the data they enter into your app. Can you talk to me about that? Because I think it's fantastic, but I don't know what you guys did to make it.
So what we did was we broke down the different, like what we call attributes of fitness. There's upper body muscular strength, upper body muscular endurance, all the way to, we got lower body, you've got short distance cardio capabilities, long distance cardio capabilities, etc. And then there's all these different things that can factor into each one of those. So on the cardio side, running, cycling, rowing can all factor in. And on the strength side, there's specific movements that factor into those variables as well. And the goal with that was to really help normalize, to Matt's point, of like, how do you actually compete with athletes that are of a different like a different type of athlete than you? So like Mats and I have been workout buddies for the last like 4 or 5 years. We both weigh approximately like 175 pounds. And he is like a very, very good cardio athlete. And I am like a mediocre, but like better strength athlete. And so
what does that make me,
And so like, I'll never beat him in a race, and he's never going to beat me in the gym. But we can still have this like aggregated apples to apples score that compares what are we capable of doing relative to people that are similar profiles to us. And then like, if you look at it for context for listeners, it's basically this radar chart. So it's my favorite like thing to picture is if you think about back to the Pokemon days, where you would have like attack, special attack, defense, and there would be like the spider web in the middle where you would see like, yeah, exactly. Thank you, Alex. Where you'll be able to see like where are you strong, where are you weak, etc. Like Mats is like full like 99th percentile across a bunch of the cardio disciplines, and like a little bit lower on the strength side. And mine is the exact inverse. Like I'm much stronger for a guy of my weight than the average person, but I'm not that fast from a cardio perspective. And so like I'm like very strong on the left and like pretty like mediocre on the right. And so together we both are like neck and neck on the cardio score side. But like we can now make progress across whatever disciplines we want in order to improve that score and compete. So like I don't have to compete with Mats by getting faster and trying to beat him in a race. I can keep working on the things that I love to work on, make progress there, and still have my overall score go up and try and pass him that way, which has been a new fun way to have dynamic competition.
Okay, can I just add one thing to that I really love? Because so my philosophy on like hybrid athletes, especially athletes getting in a new sport, has changed. I would say if someone had to ask me what's the biggest thing that's changed over the last like 15 years in your approach to hybrid training, my approach early on was that athletes who are new to a sport should probably do the thing that they're like worst at. If you, in other words, let's say you're a big time lifter and you first get into endurance sports, I'd be like, well, you should really just be improving your base. Let's just get you doing lots of long, slow runs and this and that and the other. And it's kind of like shoring up your weakest point. I think where my philosophy has switched on that is I'm going, well, running is more than just long, slow distance. There's, running economy, efficiency, like VO2 training, sprint training, a lot of other factors that make you a better runner. If you've got a lifter who's already got those proficiencies in strength and power, explosive development and all that, why not have them lean into that in their run training, at least in the early phases, and let them log some wins and get some real progress there? So this whole idea of, a lot of people when they think of hybrid training think, okay, well, I just want to be like the best all around at everything. And it's like, that doesn't have to be the way. You can be really good at one thing and leverage that strength in another area and still be a phenomenal all around athlete, even if you're weighted to one side or another. It doesn't mean, it doesn't mean you're never going to be a great runner, but it means, hey, you might be really good at some of the speed work and some of the distance stuff early on. You might really enjoy that training. Like, enjoy your unique athlete profile, because sometimes I always say hybrid training is all about putting on the white belt over and over and over again. But sometimes it's nice to put on the white belt in a sport that's close enough to yours that you're the white belt everyone's terrified of.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool.
I think that really came through in your latest book, which by the way we all love and sometimes I've referred to internally as the Bible.
Like quite literally.
I think what really came through in your book, which I really enjoyed to read, especially as someone who like kind of had my initial athletic career and now I'm like kind of after that and looking like what are all the things I want to do for the rest of my life, is this ability. What's really cool about being a hybrid athlete is you can kind of like explore new facets of your fitness. We're like, okay, the next 6 months I want to focus on triathlon, then I want to do a high rocks, then I want to get back to lifting or whatever it is. And what I'm really excited by of this kind of like data set that's building and all these users in the hybrid community is that I think we'll start to better understand like all those factors that you were talking about, like your running economy, your strength, your explosiveness, like how do those all play together? How can we visualize those? And how can we help athletes not quote unquote like have their cardio kill their gains for that expression of like, is there an effect of like, if I just do a bunch of long, slow distance, does my explosivity in the weight room, for example, does that get dulled? I think we'll be able to start better answering a lot of those questions and help people avoid any of the trade-offs of taking all this like really fun, adventurous path around their fitness.
The other thing just to add on top of that I think is really cool about this is, hybrid athletes, I almost think about the way that they train as like training in chapters in a lot of way. Like there's the marathon chapter, then you're going to do your Ironman chapter, then you're going to go back to the 5K chapter. And like, this is just me like in like the last like year and a half personally, but like everybody, like some people like stick with one discipline for a really long time or like one event for a really long time. But like a lot of people kind of like fluctuate on like, what is the goal? What is the next thing that I want to try and do? And being able to feed all of that data into one centralized place and be able to see over time how your different like fitness attributes change and fluctuate as you go through these different chapters, I think is actually really fascinating.
Yeah. I also like the idea of a hybrid score too, because I think sometimes when people start spreading out what they do, say they do want to try a whole bunch of new things and they're worried that they've lost. They're like, like I've been stuck at about 95% of my max strength on the squat for ages, like, fatigue, mass fitness and all that. But man, if I'm just sacrificing one thing for another, but then they look at something like the score that shows they've gone up 50, 60 points and they're like, oh, okay. So, maybe I've lost a little bit over here, but I've built up such a wealth of physical capability here. It's a really good thing to see, because I think that's important for people, because I think people need that, yes, it's all the individual journey and everything else and whatever. Find a t-shirt with a good quote on it. But like for a lot of people too, there's like hey, I'm putting in a lot of work. I want to feel like I'm just getting better. I started doing this whole hybrid thing because I want to be able to do whatever I want and feel competent and capable at everything. And it's like, all right, here's an actual demonstration that I'm on the right path.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Ben quote ever is number go up.
I love when number go up. I think like a big part of our job is not only to get you to be able to actually like have those gains and help you make that progress, but it's to make you feel like you deserve to feel good about having accomplished those things too. And like we want to try and like kind of close that feedback loop for people as part of the experience too.
Very cool. So guys, if people want to follow HYBRD on Instagram, I'll obviously be putting all of these links in the podcast information, but if they wanted to follow HYBRD on Instagram, what's the right place to go for that?
Go to @HYBRD_app, and HYBRD is spelled HYBRD. We went back to the early 2000s and removed a vowel.
At least you didn't name it Hybrid Rockstar. And
if we knew about it, we probably wouldn't have started the company.
If someone wants to follow you guys individually on your Instagrams, know that there are a great many good skits coming up. Where can they follow you individually?
You can get me at HYBRD_Ben and him at HYBRD_Mats, MATS.
Perfect.
That's just for fun, though. You should, if you want to see all the training insights, go to HYBRD app.
Nothing educational here, trust me.
Yeah.
If you want to laugh at us instead of with us, you can follow us on our personals.
I would say you'd be surprised at how many CHP people would be like, hell yeah.
All right, cool. Well, next time we come to Boise, we're going to have to get you guys in some skits, so keep your head on.
Let's do it.
Fine. Let's wait till spring though, when whatever this cold is has.
Yeah, when it doesn't.
Deal.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and chatting with us about hybrid. If anyone has any questions about hybrid usability, obviously you can DM Ben Motz on Instagram at the hybrid account or either of their accounts. And if you want to have any questions for us about the book, what it looks like in the app and things like that, you can message Trevor, you can message CHP Instagram, anything like that. So we're just happy to help and happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was great to chat with you guys.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.